opens with b3, the Nimzo Larsen attack. This is classic Hikaru. He loves these offbeat openings that take opponents out of their preparation. After pawn to a6, bishop to b2, pawn to e6, pawn to g3, knight to f6, we see Harsh responding very naturally, not falling for any opening tricks. Then bishop to g2, bishop to e7, pawn to e4, and now Hikaru transitions into a more traditional central pawn structure. The key moment comes after pawn to d5, pawn to e5, knight to d7, pawn to f4. Hikaru's going for this aggressive pawn storm setup, trying to create attacking chances on the king side. But notice how calmly Harsh responds with pawn to c5. This move is absolutely critical. Black is immediately striking back in the center, not allowing white to just roll forward with the attack. Now here's where things get really interesting. After the sequence pawn to c4, pawn takes pawn on c4, pawn takes pawn on c4, castle's kingside, both sides have completed development. But look at this position carefully. Hikaru continues with his plan. Knight to e2, knight to c6, castle's kingside, queen to c7, and then we get this fascinating maneuver. Pawn to d3, pawn to b6, knight to c3, bishop to b7. Harsh is playing like a grandmaster here. He's not just developing pieces, he's creating long-term pressure on that light squared diagonal. The game really explodes after knight to e4, rook to d8, pawn to a3, knight to d4. This is where Harsh shows he's not intimidated by Hikaru's reputation. He's centralizing the knight, creating immediate threats, and forcing white to make difficult decisions. And then we get this incredible sequence. Pawn to g4, knight takes knight on e2 check, queen takes knight on e2, pawn to b5. Look at this. Harsh just sacrificed his centralized knight, but he's getting immediate counterplay on the queen side. Hikaru continues with his attacking plan. Pawn to g5, knight to b6, rook to c1, pawn takes pawn on c4, pawn takes pawn on c4, but black's pieces are becoming incredibly active. The position after rook to d7 is just beautiful for black. Every piece has a purpose, and you can feel the pressure building. Then comes the fireworks. Knight to f6 check. Hikaru tries to blast through with tactics, but watch this. Pawn takes knight on f6, pawn to f6, bishop to d6. Harsh isn't panicking. He's keeping his king safe while maintaining all the pressure. This is ice-cold calculation under fire. Now Hikaru goes all in with queen to h5, threatening mate. But look at black's response. Rook to d8! This is just crushing. Black has doubled rooks on the d-file, and white's attack is starting to look more desperate than dangerous. After pawn to f5, bishop takes pawn on h2 check. What a shot. Harsh is giving up the bishop to expose the white king, and suddenly, Hikaru's the one who has to worry about getting mated. King to h1, rook to d2, and just look at this position. Black's rooks have invaded white's position completely. The game is basically over, but let's see how it ends. The final phase is just pure technique from Harsh. After the bishops come off with bishop takes bishop on b7, queen takes bishop on b7 check, rook to f3, rook to d3, black has a completely winning rook endgame. And Hikaru resigned. In the final position, black is up material and has a trivially winning endgame. The bishop and rook versus rook endgame is just elementary technique at this level.